Hello, welcome to Coming to Know Yourself. In this video, I wanted to have a conversation about what the self really is. If you're going to come to know yourself, it would be good to kind of get an idea of where you're traveling and what you're seeking. And there's a lot of confusion out there about what the self really is. And it's not really about seeking, it's more about recognizing, coming back to your real self. Right now, the human identity, the self-image we have of ourselves, has been created outside of us over however many years we've been alive. The experiences, the accumulation, our names, our childhood, the experiences, our beliefs, our goals, our fears, our trauma, all the stuff that entails the human life puts together this self-identity that we identify with as who we are. But it's not who we are, it's a created identity that we identify with as a character, and a character in this game of life, this temporary life. And we identify with it so strongly because it becomes our personality, and personality is an acronym for personal reality. And so it's really hard to let go of your own personal reality and find another version of yourself and identify with being somebody else when your whole reality that you take personal as who you are is, needing to be left behind. And you're like, well, where do I go if I'm leaving my entire personal reality behind, And so there's a lot of confusion out there, and everybody's searching in their minds for this self. And the mind is where the personal reality, the character that we created in the first place came from. Everything that we've ever experienced since we were born has been in the mind. So everything in the mind is not who we are. The mind is a spiritual place. And we'll talk more about that. It's not in the brain. The mind is another place. It's an intangible place. And our real being, our spiritual being, exists there in that spiritual place called the mind. In the Bible, in the scriptures, they call the mind the kingdom. And the mind is our spiritual kingdom. And each one of us has our own kingdom that we rule over. We decide how we feel, what's going on in our minds, what we believe in, what we store as memories. We are the rulers and sole creators of our entire world and our personal reality inside our minds that makes us have our own personality, our own character that we identify with. But when we first came into this life, we had a different personal reality as newborns. And that personal reality knew nothing of this life. That personality as a newborn didn't even know language or what was going on around them. They only knew their basic instincts that created their own personality, their character. And we're drawn to that character, that personality that a newborn has. We want to soak it up, that love, that peace, the light in their eyes. We want to feel it. We want to hold them. They're so wonderful to hold. And it's because we feel, and what we feel is what is a vague remembrance of what we used to be. Because to know is to feel, and to feel is to experience. That's how you know, is by experience. And so knowing is feeling, and feeling is experiencing. And so the idea is to come back to your real self, to come to know yourself, is to come to feel that feeling that you had before, and remember it and recognize that feeling of who you once were. And it's tough when you have this character, this personality that we've formed over a whole lifetime, and we identify with it. And we have so many feelings about our own personality, our own character. It's it's when we were little children, we were so, afraid. We had anxieties, we had fears. We didn't feel comfortable in this world. We felt like we were idiots. We were ignorant to this world and how to live, and all the adults were telling us this is how you're supposed to do it, and they certainly didn't have it, perfect. And so we would grow up going, well, I'm not any better than I thought I was, and I'm still searching for peace and love and happiness. And so it's really hard to let go of that character. But in order to remember and feel your real self, it takes letting go of that human identity, that character, and everything in it, the whole thing, all the beliefs, all the knowledge, everything that makes us feel confident. If you've got these beliefs in you, this way of being that gives you that confidence, like this is how I run my character, because I have these beliefs that I've formed that gives me this confidence based on all these experiences with people that made me act a certain way and be a certain way, to have this respect and validation and acceptance by people. It's very scary. It takes bravery and great courage to let go of that identity, that personality that has made us feel so comfortable in a lot of ways, even though we suffer in it, to feel safe, and not vulnerable, at least as much as we can. But to come to know the real self, the one that's truly fearless, truly confident, truly understands life, truly experiences love and peace in its fullness, it takes a leap of faith to let go of everything we are, everything we've ever been taught, everything we've ever believed in, everything that, all the knowledge that we have, all of our opinions, every book we've ever read, to just set it down. Not to just let it all go and take my word for it. Just put it aside and just don't identify with that being part of you or how you see reality. Let go of all the prejudices, all the opinions, because immediately what a person wants to do is compare everything they believe to what they're trying to learn. And they want what they already believe to be validated. But that's the trap. That's the framework. All that knowledge that we currently have that creates our personality, all of our beliefs, it's a framework that boxes us into the reality that we're in. And if we want to get out of our suffering, out of the reality that we're in, and we want to find that peace, that love, we have to dismantle that box that we've created, that framework of knowledge that we've created, like walls around our whole being for most of our lives. And so this self, in order to come to know it, is to feel it. And then once you feel it enough, eventually you recognize that feeling, because you suddenly remember that this is who you are, because there's no denying it. It's like, how can you deny who you are? You've been identifying with this human identity for so long in this body, which is temporary and dies, and saying, this is me, and this human life is me. But when you come to really feel your real self, you'll see there are two separate things. The body, your self-identity you created in your mind, that's that. And the real self is you. And they're not the same. They're not together. They're not part of each other. One is created and temporary, which is your personality, your identity as a human, which is created in the mind, it's temporary, and the body, which is temporary. And then there's you, the eternal you, the real self that you had when you were first born. And when you were first born, all you knew was your own being. You totally understood life because you knew who you were, and you were so full of love, and you had no fear, and you had no judgment. You didn't even know language. You were just being, and you were open, one with everything. People came to you, and you just open arms. Unless someone kind of scary looking and you cry as a baby. And every once in a while your feelings get the better of you, but for the most part, you didn't hate yourself. There was no self-loathing. You were at peace. You were chill. You didn't need anything. You weren't like, buy me this, buy me that. I need this, I need that. You were just like, yeah, carry me around. I just want love. I need some food. I don't like my pants wet. And now we've come so far, and we've gained a lot of strength and courage with the human identity we have. But now is the time to make a leap of faith and come back to yourself. And the way you come to know yourself is to recognize that feeling. And when you don't know it and recognize it, it merges with the feeling of your body and how you feel about your own life. You know, when people say, when teenagers say, "You're ruining my life," what they're talking about is the life that they've created with this own personal identity, how they identify with life and everything. It's the life that they've created as a character in this story. And the reason why they're saying that we're ruining their life is because they're feeling a certain way. The totality of their character and the life they're living is currently feeling not good. But that feeling of the body and the personality and the character and the everyday happening of life, it changes constantly. We feel so much about everything, about ourselves, about what's going on. We're jumping from one feeling to the next. But they're all temporary. They're not forever. Even the body grows and changes constantly. We're always changing how we feel about the body. We're always changing about how we feel about how we look. We're always changing how we feel about the life we're living, how we want to change it. But there's one single feeling that has been with us our entire life. It was there when we were born and we knew it, and it was who we were and who we are now. And that feeling when you don't know who you really are and you forgot becomes a casual recognition. And what we now casually recognize, which is our true self, is now said when we're all by ourselves and we're just alone, we recognize it as the feeling of being alone. When we're all by ourselves, we can say, "I'm by myself, I know it because I feel alone." But when we say I feel alone, what we're really saying is I feel my own presence, my being. And it's not the feeling of the body. You know, you touch it, you feel it, you know, it's here, right? But this feeling of being alone, that is the presence of our spirit, our true self. And that what we're feeling in that presence is our awareness. And our awareness, when we don't know that this alone feeling is who we are, merges with the body, and we feel like our awareness is inside the brain, and we're looking out these eyes. But the awareness is not part of the body. It's not part of the brain. Awareness is everywhere. It's all around you. You're immersed in it. It's who you are. It's your being. It's your spirit. And so that feeling of being alone is your spirit, your awareness, your presence. It's how you know you exist. And if you could get rid of all of your past, every negative experience, everything, every trauma, every fear, if you could make your mind and your heart completely still and empty, that alone feeling would feel like total bliss, inner peace, just a constant feeling that never changes. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down. It's just the sameness. And that alone feeling has never changed our entire lives. Every time we're by ourselves, we can recognize that feeling and say, "I feel alone." And it doesn't change. You're not like, "Oh, this time I feel alone and it's terrible." Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like being alone. But being able to recognize that you're alone through that feeling never changes. We can change our opinion about it and say, "I don't like feeling alone," or "I like being alone. It's fun, you know. But I enjoy reading by myself." You know, whatever it is, we can create opinions about that and create a feeling on top of it. But the very recognition that you are alone, that feeling is your presence, your being. And alone is not a bad thing. It's not the same thing as being lonely and feeling isolated. Those are two separate things. Alone is an acronym for all one. All one. Alone. I'm being alone with myself. I'm being all one because I know myself. I'm experiencing my existence I'm all one. The alone feeling is the I in I am. And that feeling of aloneness is the I space, the space at which you truly exist in. When the body disappears and all of reality disappears, the space that you exist in, your immortal existence, your I space, the place that you refer to when you say I, that alone space, that solitary place of being, that is the place of I, the self. And you can never see it. If you can get an idea and see something in your mind, that is created. It's not who you are. The self can only be felt, recognized, and remember who you really are. By feeling that alone feeling enough, taking all your attention and focus away from the five senses, away from pleasure, away from distraction, away from escapism, and bring yourself to that oneness, that I space, that aloneness. Feel that aloneness. And the more you get to know that alone feeling, and now that you know it as more than just being alone, recognize and remember and tell yourself as you're getting to know it, this is my awareness. When I say I feel alone, I should say I feel myself. I feel my awareness. Because when you finally merge with really knowing it and saying, this is me, and you really feel it and recognize it, it will go from an alone feeling to self-awareness. And the more you empty your self of that human identity and get rid of all the trauma and grasping and clinging to all your beliefs and knowledge and past and everything that forms the character and personality of your human identity, the more you let go of all that, you'll feel the fullness of that alone self, that all oneness. You'll feel the peace, because that self-awareness will begin to grow into inner peace. Because that awareness, that self, that alone self feeling is inner peace. It's just that it's such a smooth state of being, like a perfect pond of glass, just total stillness of being. That everything in the human life is like throwing rocks and boulders and pebbles into your own being, your emotional being. And it's hard to experience the inner peace that you are when we're so distracted stimulating ourselves with other things, thoughts, beliefs, opinions, prejudices, ideas, judgments, the pursuit of happiness, wants, fears. All this stuff is just constantly hitting our emotional being and hiding, diluting the experience of our real self. And so Spinoza says, I feel, therefore I am. And so if we take that and say, I feel alone, therefore I am this alone feeling. And what I am feeling, I am being. And what I am being is who and what I am. And so when on the path of the way that I talk about in the introduction, when you travel the way to restore your emotional well-being, to empty your heart of all the trauma and all the negative polarity of the human identity, and let go of the human identity, eventually that alone self, the beingness of yourself, returns to being all one. Body, mind, heart, and soul. And that's when you can experience the total fullness of inner peace and the transcendence into total love. The experience of that image that God made us in, where we just experience that heavenly bliss. It's the negative polarity of the human identity that we've accumulated and filled in our hearts, thinking that we're going to find something out here that's going to mend this void. And the journey, the way is traveling to clean the inside of the cup, as Jesus would say, and get that all out of there so we can make it whole again, make our hearts whole again. Holy, the Holy Grail is our hearts. Because inside that, our hearts, is the divine spark that God gave us, the life, the truth, and the way brings us back to experiencing the life and the truth of our being. And then that alone feeling no longer feels alone. It feels like the all oneness. And you're not only all one inside, emotionally well and totally at peace, you're one with everything. And you see life through a total, clear, peaceful, and loving lens. And so a lot of people don't like to spend a lot of time alone, but the ultimate final step is total self-acceptance. Because every action we take to try to not be alone, to not feel alone, to distract ourselves, to pursue happiness, every single one is the lack of accepting how we feel at any given moment. And so we're literally not accepting ourselves. We're saying, I don't like feeling this alone self, this inner peace that I am. I don't know that it's inner peace, and I don't trust it. And so I don't like it. I don't like to be alone. And so I'm going to try to find something to stimulate me so that I don't have to feel myself, my current state of feeling. And so it's kind of like a leap of faith to let go of who you are entirely, everything. It's the hardest thing to let go is the self-identity, the self-image we've created, and become empty and wait and come to know who we really are. To sit in that space, the I space, and just be alone with ourselves and say, instead of searching for enlightenment or searching for something to happen, because it's not that something happens, it's that you just remember by recognizing the feeling of yourself. And it takes time for all these emotional effects in our minds, all the stuff going on in our minds and in all the stuff going in our hearts to come to rest. And when it finally comes to rest, the I becomes one. And then it's the I in I am. And then you recognize and feel your real self, because that I is also a straight line for the perfect stillness of being. And it's in that perfect stillness of being that we fully experience and recognize that all one self. And remember that that is who we are, that we left that feeling for the pursuit out there in the world, and we didn't realize that we had everything already. And so part of the path of the way is to cleanse the emotional body and the mind so that that can come to a total stillness again. Stillness of heart, stillness of mind. Because to be whole and to really experience your true being, the holy grail is the cup, is your heart. And what's the holy grail is because the wholeness is the holy grail. And an empty heart is the wholeness. Because no matter what the cup looks like, no matter how you adorn it, no matter what type of cup you drink out of, when they're empty, they're all the same. They're whole. Because they're not half full and they're not half empty. They're just whole. And total emptiness. And so when we first were born into this life, our hearts were whole. They weren't divided by desire and yearning and suffering and the lack of understanding. Our hearts were just empty. It was still. We were content. We were just being. And we just let life come to us. People came to us as small children. We were open to everything. We just wanted love. We wanted to laugh. We wanted to have good food and sleep. And it'd be nice if we could do that now, right? If I could just not work and lay in a hammock on the beach and just rest and have good food and people to love me, that'd be great. But the idea is we came from the easy life in the spirit realm. And this is a challenge. This life is a challenge to let go of all temptation, all the five senses temptation, and just be still and come back to yourself and feel that aloneness. Get to know that alone self. Make peace with feeling alone. Not the same as feeling lonely and isolated. If you're feeling lonely and isolated, go hang out with some friends, get some hugs, laugh, listen to people, really connect. Dissolve that isolation. Fill yourself up get rid of that loneliness, then go back somewhere, out to the woods, somewhere that's not with a lot of distractions, and just sit with yourself, and the longer you can do it, and focus on feeling alone. You don't want to focus on stuff in the mind. You don't want to focus on emptying the mind. The mind will empty itself when you're one. So it's like if you're trying to stop your thoughts, that's like someone saying, don't think of an elephant, You end up thinking more thoughts. So thoughts are simply all of the things that entail the human identity. It's the compilation of the ego in a construct constantly running through the mind. And so that compulsive thinking naturally goes away when you let go of the human identity and you make yourself whole in the heart. That constant thinking just kind of goes away because it's a sickness. It's a spiritual sickness, a disturbance of your being. And so when you sit with yourself and get to know that alone self, you may have to do it in short stints, When I had my enlightenment, I sat for 5 days staring at a wall, doing absolutely nothing. And when I mean absolutely nothing, I mean I didn't create opinions, I didn't create thoughts, I didn't look at anything going on around me, I didn't look at particular items, I didn't create any kind of detail where I could make out even the shape of anything around me. I looked through everything until I was just using the wall as a focal point to look through the wall, to stare off into space, and I focused my attention entirely on experiencing my alone feeling, my awareness. And I brought my consciousness, my conscious feeling, to just simply the act of seeing. Not what I would see, but just seeing. And I took all my feelings of everything about my life, about everything around me, I brought all my feelings down to one single feeling, just ambiance. The feeling of ambiance is a oneness. Just the act of seeing is another oneness. So not seeing anything, not looking for any kind of detail. So I created the oneness of consciousness and the oneness of feeling or awareness. And so the only thing I had left to experience was that feeling of being alone. And so what I was feeling was the feeling of being, presence, being in the now, the moment, the eternal moment. And the more I felt alone, the more I recognized, this is me. I'm not experiencing anything else. I'm not paying attention to anything out here. I'm not creating any feelings about anything. I am just experiencing me. This alone feeling is my awareness. It is me. And I also let go of my entire feeling and observance of the body. The body was not my attention. My attention and focus was entirely on that alone feeling as me, my awareness. And I wanted to know it. You know, when you're trying to get to know something, like if you eat a piece of candy, you really focus on tasting it until you get the full flavor, you know. Or if you want to see something that's off in the distance, you really focus on it for a long time till you fully see and become aware of what you're seeing, you know. Or if there's a faint smell and you really want to know what it is, you're taking a smell and you're trying to really focus on fully taking it in until you finally really fully experience it enough to say, I know what that is. So the same thing with your alone self. You focus your attention on it so much to know it, to really experience it enough to finally hone in on its true, full feeling, because we've spent our whole lives forgetting it. And it's become so vague. That feeling of aloneness, that oneness, is way out here in our perception. So the more we focus on it and bring it into focus, the more it becomes our forefront of perception. And its feeling becomes stronger and stronger and stronger until we finally have no denial that that is who we are. And it becomes inner peace, because it is inner peace. It's self-awareness, it's inner peace, it's the signature vibration of our being, it's our presence, it's how we know we exist. It is the self. And so we would say, I feel, therefore I am. I am feeling the alone self. Therefore I am this alone feeling. And what I am feeling, what I am feeling is my being. And I recognize it now. And my heart is still, and my mind is empty, because I know who I truly am. And now what I feel is all one. So in this video, we're talking about the self. And the self is that alone feeling. And we have forgotten that that self is who we are. And it takes letting go of a lot of other things and distractions to fully experience the self. And once you come to know that alone feeling is who you are, and separate the feeling of the body from that alone awareness, and the feeling about our life, that self-identity as a human, and all of our beliefs, separate those from that feeling of awareness. Once you pull them away from your focus and attention and don't not merge them together anymore, that awareness no longer feels like it's inside the head, looking out of these eyes. It feels like it's out here. You know, the Hindus have that third eye dot. They're referencing how the awareness, the third eye awakening, your awareness moves from the perspective of being back here inside the head to the forefront. And it feels like your body is behind you when you wake up and come to know yourself, because your spirit is not part of the body. So it's an illusion. And so what ends up happening is now all you are is just pure awareness. When you come to know that alone self is who you are, you merge your consciousness into a shift of the awareness is you, and now you're just pure awareness looking outward. And the body's behind you. And it feels like your awareness is floating out here because your being is not part of the body. And so then, once you separate those two, you are experiencing total self-awareness. And so you can't see yourself. It's like a mirror trying to see themselves in a mirror. You are the one who reflects, the one who's aware, who observes. You can never see yourself. You're an infinite reflection of yourself. You are a reflection of reality. And everything outside of you is a reflection of you. So the idea is, when you wake up and you merge into that awareness and that alone feeling is who you are, all you can do is just look out, and you can't get an idea of who you are anymore. You just are experiencing life. And it's very peaceful because you're no longer being bombarded by thoughts and anxieties and frustrations, and it's no longer identifying it as who you are. So the idea is, right now, your awareness, the body, the feeling of the body, the feeling of awareness, or that alone feeling, which we've identified as alone is actually our awareness, our self, and the feeling of our identity layered on top of the body, the human identity, they're all merged right now. And so the idea is to separate them. And the way you do that, first acknowledge that you are not the body, you're not what you observe, and acknowledge that since you can observe your self-identity as a human, your personality, your character, all your beliefs, your thoughts, and your mind, those are observations. They're things you created, so they're not who you are. So that the first step is letting go of believing you are the body or your human identity. The second part is disassociating the feeling of the body with the feeling of yourself, the feeling of your awareness, that aloneness. Once you've disassociated them as being the same thing or a part of each other, focus on the alone feeling as your awareness of yourself. And the more you get to know that alone feeling, compared to the feeling of the body and your human identity, it's kind of like you know when you're happy versus when you're sad. Because you spent your whole life experiencing both, and you know when you're happy in contrast and comparison to how you felt being sad. You felt both, you can compare them, and you know which one you're being. There's no way I could say you're being both at the same time, or that they're part of each other. One is happy, one is sad. They're two separate things. Two separate experiences, two separate feelings. So once you disassociate the body and the human identity as part of your awareness that you feel like is inside your head looking out of these eyes, and that alone feeling is being part of you, of your body and your self-identity, once you separate them, the more you focus on that alone feeling as your awareness and not the awareness being centered inside the head, the more you look back and forth, you'll get a contrast. You'll say, the feeling of the body and the human identity that I identify as my life, and the feeling of this aloneness, this awareness, they're two separate experiences. One of them's got to be me, and it certainly isn't the body because it's temporary, and it certainly isn't the self-identity as a human because we created it. And you can't be alive without the awareness, without the alone recognition of being. So one of them's got to be you, and we know that the body and the thoughts and the self-identity is temporary. The aloneness has always been there, and it's never changed. And it is the self-awareness of being. That feeling is who you are. Merge with it, get to know it, recognize it, accept it as who you are, and work on letting go of the rest. All of it, the past, the trauma, the self-identity, the feeling about the body, whether you like it or dislike it, just let it all go. It's not you. It won't be there forever anyways. Your alone, eternal oneness, yourself, that will be you forever. I mean, imagine, for all eternity, that is you, and the body and the surroundings will change, but you will always be centered in that I space, and everything around you will change eternally. So, on the rest of this series of Coming to Know Yourself, we'll talk more about the way to empty ourselves so that we can fully experience that inner peace of being, that aloneness, that all oneness, and come to know the other half of our being. Waking up to the truth of ourself is the first half. That's the path of truth. The second half is the path of love, to come to know the fullness of the love and peace inside of us, the joy, the light in our eyes. That requires letting go and purging the heart and the soul and the mind of the human identity. The human identity is the total negative polarity. It's not meant to be who we are forever. It's just a vessel to gather experiences, to get wisdom, to say, I know what I'm not. I know where I've been. I don't want to go there again. I don't like suffering. I want to be back to who I was, the oneness, the aloneness, the solitary being of all oneness, the inner peace. And I want my heart to heal and no longer be divided and constantly yearning and wanting to fill a void. I want to be whole again. I want the Holy Grail to be restored. I want my heart to be empty and serene in that serenity so I can feel the fullness of love again. And that's the main part of the path of the way. Once you wake up to yourself and come to know that truth of the aloneness of self-awareness, is to travel the way and perfect it, because the way is not something you travel and get to the end and then you're done. The way is an eternal path, living the way for all eternity, because it keeps you in that eternal life, in the oneness. Okay, folks, I think that's all I can say about that conversation for now. Until next time, I wish you the best. I'm sorry for your suffering, and I send you my love and my peace. Take care for now.